Hello, I'm Ruben Prado, and the term I chose for this project is copyright and the internet. The introduction of the internet revolutionized most, if not all, facets of society, such as education, business, government, and communication. But with the advent of the internet also came a surge of copyright piracy. In this speech, I will be discussing the repercussions of piracy, the principles behind making good copyright policies, and what will come about from the application of those principles. In order to ensure that social development and IP protection don't bottleneck each other, it is important that effective digital copyright policies are established. First and foremost, let's go over the consequences of piracy. The problem with copyright piracy is that it's a detriment to the economic development of not only fully developed countries like the US, but also smaller developing countries. In the article Growth of the Internet and the Establishment of Proper Digital Copyright Strategies, China as a Case Study, by Yiyun Tian, a postgraduate research associate of Baker and McKenzie Cyberspace Law and Policy Center in Australia, I read that according to a study conducted by International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, IFPI for short, nearly 40% of physical recordings in the market are illegal. And the value of the pirated market for music had reached 4.6 billion in 2003. This shows that copyright holders are losing inordinate amounts of money through piracy. Those losses are only a part of the entertainment sector too. If we turn to the other sectors like technology, we'll know that in the US alone, the biggest copyright exporting country in the world, the losses caused by software piracy equal to 6.6 billion in 2004. Let's also not forget the negative impact copyright piracy has had on the ones who are actually making these digital copyright products, like musicians or software developers. This copyright piracy problem doesn't only apply to the US either. To illustrate, in 2003, the piracy rate in North America region, 23%, was much lower than that of the Asia Pacific region, which was 53%. But the losses of software industries in North America had gone beyond $7.2 billion, just slightly lower than their losses in the Asia Pacific region, which was 7.5 billion. This piracy issue is a global one that includes countries of all sizes and shapes. With that being said, let's now discuss what can be done about piracy. There are two general principles that must be followed in order to make effective copyright policies in this day and age. These two principles are not my own, and instead I found them in Yiyun Tian's article and thought that they were very well thought out. According to Tian, the first principle that a nation has to bear in mind may be that it should align copyright and economic development policies in order to make copyright policy more systematic and sustainable. Doing this should incentivize people and industries in general to protect IPs, which is good for the purposes of suppressing piracy. Moving on. The second principle that a nation should pay attention to when making its copyright policy is to establish a relationship between copyright policy and technology policy. If not done right, copyright policy can become a hindrance for a country's development. The first principle has been adopted by China already and has given fruits such as the protection of IP growing stronger, self-owned IP production increasing, and sped up industrialization of IP production. As for the second principle, there's precedence of African countries having tried out the IP laws of developed countries like the US, and being met with unfavorable results. You might be asking if there isn't a better solution. Maybe there's one that's more universal, perhaps. The problem with that is that there's no one-size-fits-all quick fix. As I just mentioned with the African countries, they try to emulate the policies of other more fully developed countries without trying to adapt it for their own needs. And the already established development policies they had just didn't mesh well. On the other hand, though, we should look at the positives. Having well-made digital copyright policies will not get rid of all copyright piracy or international conflicts regarding IP traits, but it will surely help minimize it. Not only that, but it'll also create a healthy environment in which all nations can implement their own copyright laws and policies, giving countries an easier time developing and modernizing. If ineffective copyright policies are made and or kept, then piracy will run rampant, creating huge losses for the respective industry and countries. Another consequence is the fact that IP trade wars would occur more often, an instance in which countries give demands and sanction each other through export tariffs to bear pressure, usually on lesser level countries. With that being said, it's essential to be knowledgeable about these topics. For more information on copyright in the US, you can go to www.copyright.gov. While trying to help further the cause of protecting IPs isn't as simple as simply donating money on some random website, there's a simple way in which people can help out, and that is to not pirate IPs yourself. We wouldn't have a need for copyright policies in the first place if everyone simply stopped pirating, so don't pirate. Although, it should be noted that such an event happening is virtually impossible. In conclusion, with the creation of the internet, the fight against copyright piracy is more relevant than ever. Therefore, it's essential that efficacious digital copyright policies are put in place, ensuring that social development and IP protection will synergize. That way, piracy will be kept at a minimum, facilitating the development of countries around the globe. Since the internet is here to stay, it's all that much important that we adapt to its drawbacks.